In August and September 2020, the variant referred to as the cluster 5 variant. What? Hello everyone. Should I introduce myself with I'm General Luna. Whoa. Want to know what my friends and family might want to know about COVID-19. And then I will try to answer a variant of SARS-CoV-2 with D614G substitution in the gene encoding the spike protein emerged in
late January or early February 2020. In August and September 2020, a SARS-CoV-2 variant linked to infection among farmed mink and subsequently transmitted to human.
Why am I reading this? Because today I'm going to answer a question related to this. And just again, I encourage my friends and family or whoever's watching this who wants to ask question to drop your question in the Google form I've created. How do we know which variant do we have? Thank you for this question. It's very tough one for me to answer in layman's term or not. Ended up like giving a lecture. To answer the question, first we have to answer several other questions. So first, what is a virus?
What is physics?
Second, what does variant mean? And third, how do we know which variant we have, which is the question proper. So what is a virus? Basically, a virus is just a genetic code. It's either a DNA or an RNA. So it's an obligatory intracellular parasite. What do we mean by that? Obligatory means it has to, like it's a must. And intracellular means, because our human body are made up of cells, and intracellular means that they have to be inside our cell in order to quote unquote live. That's what the parasite means. Like it depends on us. It needs a host. But whether it is considered alive or not is still debatable in science. But usually what we will say is that it's not really alive because it's basically a genetic code. So since COVID is so trending, I typically find a picture that looks like COVID because of the spike protein or looks like coronavirus. So again, it's basically just genetic code inside. You can also think of it as like a Pandora's box. You don't really know what's inside until you open it. And when we do open it, we find codes inside. That doesn't really make sense unless translated. And unfortunately, our cell can do that. Like they can translate or transcribe DNA to RNA and then translate it to something that would make sense or have function. Next question, what does variant mean? Remember that I said inside the virus is basically just genetic code. And usually what code means would be like, it's a type of language or like random letters or numbers that one cannot really understand unless it's translated.
Binary coded ASCII 01101110011.
So I put an example here is the binary code. Like when we look at it, it doesn't really make sense, right? Example, if I'm going to say good morning, I would say good morning, but if I use binary code equivalent, usually people won't be able to understand me. But if someone can decode it or translate it to the words good morning, that makes sense. Um, this is basically what the virus is doing to our body. So virus has a bunch of code inside of it that doesn't really make sense for our body, but once it enters our cell, that has the capability to transcribe and translate the DNA or RNA inside the virus to amino acids or building blocks to protein. That would make sense because protein now has functions, and one of the most widely known protein that is important to COVID would be the spike protein, because the spike protein is what is needed basically to get inside our cell or to invade. So here I just want to show you that instead of the binary code using 0 and 1, I hope people are familiar with the code from our DNA and RNA using these letters, the A, C, and T, and G. And for RNA, we use U. So these are codes from DNA and RNA, and eventually they will mean something. For example, the AUG, that might mean August for some people. For the cell, it can mean, hey, I need a methionine amino acid here. So this would be the first amino acid. And the second amino acid, the code says, I need an alanine. Third says, I need a serine. Basically, we have around 20 well-studied amino acids, and they have three-letter code. ALA stands for alanine, and letter A stands for alanine. For scientists or those who really want to understand viruses in depth, they would know what this code means or stands for. So later on, we will come back to this table just to briefly explain. Basically, think of it as a lock and key. Inside the virus, we have this genetic code, DNA or RNA, which eventually can be decoded and translated into a key or protein that has a structure that can open something. So imagine that this right here is our cell, and we have the lock that has a hole that with certain type of shape, and the virus is able to make a key with the genetic code that is able to open the door into our cell. That's how it invades. And sometimes if we notice when we duplicate our key, there's a certain type of key that opens the same door or same lock more easily than the other. That is kind of like what a variant is. When virus duplicate, sometimes there are genetic codes that may have changes, aka we also call that mutation. So mutation basically means changes, and sometimes the changes can help the virus to have a key that is shaped in a way that it opens the door of our cells more easily. If we notice that the variants that are being recorded are not so many, but basically, theoretically speaking, there must be already tons of different variants. But why are not all reported? It is because not every mutation or changes is important enough. So the ones that are being reported are the ones that are significant or important, like the British variant. Why is it so famous? It is because that British variant is known to spread faster. And it is because somehow it made a key that has a shape that can open locks or cells more easily than the original variant. So back to what I read a while ago from the WHO, it says here that um, a variant of SARS-CoV-2 with D614G substitution. So I will bring up the table again. The letter D here means that somewhere in the position, so this is a protein already that has function. So um, we went from DNA, RNA to amino acid, which are building blocks. And when it's smaller, we call it peptide, and eventually it becomes a protein. And something we want to remember about protein is that the shape or how it looks like is very important. And with a different type of amino acids, the protein eventually will shape into different forms. So D here is the code, the letter code for the amino acid aspartic acid or aspartate. 614 here means that somewhere here, the 614th position is just a position like which one, which amino acid. So somewhere here, let's imagine that the position 614 is here. It was originally aspartate or aspartic acid. G substitution, it means that from D, it became G, glycine. So the position 614 aspartate was substituted by glycine. Even though the change is really small, somehow the protein end product, or as we know as the key, remember when we spread virus, it is always thousands or millions of them. So there are so many chances for them to make new variant, but not every variant are being reported because not every variant makes a new type of key that is good enough like for the virus to invade better. So back to our main question of the day, how do we know which variant do we have? Based on the explanation above, a variant means a change in the genetic code. So therefore, to know which variant we have, we need to know the code. So it is basically through laboratory tests, specifically genetic tests. We need to know what the code is. So unless we have the technology, it is not really possible for us, like common people, to know which variant did I get. We need special tests for that. Just a follow-up questions I saw earlier that I think I can answer also here. Is it possible to get multiple strains of COVID at the same time? For me personally, with my knowledge, I would say it is quite possible. Because remember, every time we spread the virus, it is thousands or millions. If like in our body, different species of bacteria, viruses, and fungi can live together, I think it won't be that hard for the same species of COVID with different strain or variant to also live together. Would we ever know again unless we have the techie test to find out the code? We would not really know which variant we got. And just an update, the British variant was reported to be around what 50 to 70%. Um, like they're more contagious. I think that is also why, despite we already have the vaccines, there's increase in cases in the Philippines. And there are also variants that are still under study. And based on what I've researched, many of them also spread faster. So it would be really helpful for people to still continue to practice the standard protocol like wearing of mask and distancing, whether they have the vaccines already or not. So lastly, thank you for watching. If you have more questions, please uh, leave them in the Google form I've created and I will try to answer them. Like easy to understand, I hope. Bye.